Hello everyone, today we'll be covering the overview of the Specific Relief Act 1963. In short, we call it SRA, that is Specific Relief Act. Okay, imagine you are A, right, and you promise to give a book to B, right, this book, right, but you in actually you don't give this book to B, right. Now B approaches the court, asking the court to order A to return this book back to B, right. But A asks the court, right, I am ready to pay rupees 200, which is the cost of the book, to B, but I won't return that book. In such case, B can approach the court under SRA and can ask A, right, to return him that book specifically instead of paying him the money. This is what Specific Relief Act is all about. It asks under this act, the plaintiff can ask the defendant to fulfill the promise itself instead of paying the damages or compensation. Okay, so it's all about the fulfillment of promise. Okay, so the Specific Relief Act 1963, it is Act number 47 of 1963. This act was enacted on 13 December 1963, right. Then this act came into force on 1st March 1964. Enacted date is when an act is passed by the parliament, signed by the president, right. Enforcement is the date when the government notify in the official gazette, then that on which date this act is going to come into force. Okay, now let's understand the purpose of the act. So this act is there to define and amend the law relating to certain kinds of specific relief. Remember, this act is non-exhaustive. Why it is non-exhaustive? Because it's defined and certain kinds of specific relief. Certain, not all. Why? Even it is not possible also to define all the kinds of specific relief, because with time new situation occurs, new relief is needed, right. So the court cannot predict sitting today that what will be the problems in future, what will be the remedies. So it is not you cannot predict it, right. So this act provides for certain kinds of specific relief only. Now let's understand the broad overview of this act. This act is divided into three parts: part 1, part 2 and part 3. Part 1 is a preliminary part that covers section 1 to 4. Part 2 provides for specific relief, that is section 5 to 35. Part 3 on the other hand, it provides for preventive relief, that is section 36 to 44. Now let's open another layer of part 1, that is preliminary part. The part 1 is covered from section 1 to 4. Section 1 talks about short title, extent and commencement, right. Then there is second section, that is section 2, that talks about definition. Then we will be talking about savings, that it saves two things. First, it saves that the relief provided under Indian Contract Act. Second, it saves the enforcement of the Indian Registration Act, right. We will discuss this further. Okay, then section 4 provides for a specific relief that can be granted only for the purpose of enforcing individual civil rights and not for enforcing penal laws. So specific relief can be granted only for the purpose of enforcing individual civil rights. Okay, now let's move further. Now in this part 2 we'll be covering specific reliefs. So section 5 to 35 covers certain specific reliefs. The first one is the recovery of possession of property. It covers both movable and immovable property. It is discussed between section 5 to 8. We'll be covering this, right, in further videos. Then there is chapter 2. It talks about specific performance of contract, that is provided between section 9 to 25, which provides that the contract should be specifically performed. Okay, then we will be further discussing in under chapter 3 the rectification of instrument. If after making the instrument or after making the contract you rectify some certain clauses in the contract, right? That is what it talks about rectification, right? That the specific performance can be claimed only on only if the only after the rectification, right? That is what we will be discussing in under chapter 3. Then there is recession of contract under chapter 4, which is covered under section 27 to 30. Chapter 5 covers the cancellation of instrument, which is covered under section 31 to 33. We will be discussing what is recession of contract, what is the cancellation of contract, what is the difference between the two. Okay, then chapter 4 is all about the declaratory decrees, right? And it is covered from section 34 to 35, which we will be discussing, right? Then there is part 3. Part 3 is all about preventive relief. Preventive relief means when you sought a relief to prevent someone from acting or taking an action, right? To prevent that person. Basically it is talking about the one thing, that is injunction. Let's see that in chapter 7 we are going to understand about injunction. Generally we will be discussing the injunction from section 36 to 37. One more thing, under order 39 of CPC, okay, we have already covered interim interim injunction, temporary injunction. So we have already covered temporary injunction under order 39 of CPC, right? Under this act we will be covering the perpetual injunction under chapter 8 between section 38 to 44. Mind you that there are only 42 sections currently, as 43, 44 are repealed by the act of 1974. So in actual we need to cover from section 1 to section number 42. This is what all we need to cover right now. Okay, 1 to 42. Okay, so the PDF through which I am teaching is, I'll attach it in description. You can get this PDF, right? This was the broad overview of this specific Relief Act 1963, right? Now in the next lecture we will be covering the part 1, that is the preliminary sections. Okay, thank you guys.